Hi, welcome back to Ag Marketing IQ In Depth. Today we're visiting with Tyler Schau, and we're going to dive into a couple of the really big questions for marketers this week. One, how do you get anywhere when you're flying blind in regard to data? Where are the markets and how are those decisions being made? And then we'll close with, farmers who are looking at selling the carry, who are working through some storage issues. What are some suggestions and some tips for them? Welcome, Tyler. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, it's always good to visit with you, Pam.
What's your high overview on this market right now? Where are we going? What are we doing?
Right now, it just kind of feels like we're treading water. Beans were up slightly today. They were actually fairly positive earlier in the day. They're up a couple cents. Corn's the opposite. It's down a few cents here. We've just kind of traded sideways over the last few days. And really take soybeans, it's been a sideways trading range for the entire year. You really don't have much over about a 80 to 90 cent range, high to low for November beans from the start of 2025 up until now. It's highly irregular. It wasn't all that common or all that long ago where we would see those types of moves in a day on soybeans. If you think back to 2021, 2022. So pretty dull. I think, there's obviously some significant headwinds in the bean market. You've probably talked and wrote about them considerable amount in regards to China and the trade issues going on. It does feel right now like the yield on soybeans, at least the reports we're getting in on the early reports, has been solid. And really that's a wide swath all the way through the Corn Belt, whether you're in Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, North Dakota. There's always going to be pockets or areas that maybe struggle and some producers that take offense to those comments. But for the most part, when you take a broad brush look at it, yields on soybeans have been favorable. And on the flip side, it feels like yields on corn have been disappointing for what was expected for all the talk there in June, July, and August of how massive this corn crop was going to be.
Absolutely. But that corn is kind of, those disappointing yields seem to be helping the market a little bit. I believe you were saying earlier.
Yeah, they have. We put in some lows off the August WASDE report. Again, we've traded higher since then. We did kind of have a little setback with the September WASDE. We got the quarterly stocks report out a week ago and found that we had even more corn. We've already rebounded off of those lows and are kind of trading back to the levels we were prior to the quarterly stocks report. So I think as more and more of those yield reports come in, and we find that the producers are, in a lot of cases, quite disappointed. Don't get me wrong; it's not a disaster of a crop. We're probably going to see a pretty decent yield as far as historical levels go. It's just not going to be that advertised 188, 186 plus national corn yield that a lot of people were, talking about early in the year. And this is coming straight from producers that are telling us it's a decent crop. It's at APH levels, slightly below APH levels, but 30, 40, 50 bushels below where they thought they were going to be when they were doing field checks there in July. And most of the comments I've heard is just disease pressures that really took the crop and then really dried it down and finished it faster than maybe they were hoping or expecting.
Sure. And, to your point on that, what we're looking at, we were thinking, I decided during COVID I wasn't going to use the term unprecedented, but that's the word that comes to mind is, an unprecedented yield for corn. And now we're still looking at a pretty darn good yield and probably still some high supply numbers possibly.
Well, there's definitely going to be high production numbers just because of the sheer amount of acres that got seeded. We're looking at harvesting 90 some million acres. I think the latest number in the last WASDE was 98 million acres planted. So you're looking at either way, you're looking at monster production, a large production. The question mark is just how big will that production be? Is it going to be just this massive amount because yields, or are we going to see it's still going to be probably the largest corn crop we've ever harvested, regardless of how far yield drops. It's just now as I think the USDA in September was at a 186 and some change on yield.
Mhm.
We're obviously not going to get an October WASDE report, or that's my assumption
Yeah,
as of right now, because that's supposed
yeah.
to be later this week, and the government's still shut down, and they need some time to prepare that. So probably not going to get an October WASDE report. The assumption was that yield number was going to probably come down a bushel to a bushel and a half with just some of these early yield reports. And who knows, we may end up in January, we might be looking at a 180 to 181 type yield on the national level, and that changes the dynamics that the market's working with right now.
And to your point on that, we read a lot. The trades are expecting this, the trades are expecting that. Talk to us a little bit about how you're looking at these markets and where you're getting your data, since we're not getting any federal data.
Yeah, so when you hear the trade, that's just a fancy word for everyone in the market, and that could be entities like ourselves at agmarket.net. It could be other trading firms. It could be institutional traders, J.P. Morgan, Chase, any of these manage money. It's basically a fancy word for the entire marketplace. What is that's the brilliant thing about a marketplace is one person's guess is usually not that accurate, but if you take thousands and thousands of people and aggregate their guess, you get pretty darn close to what it should be. So a lot of times you'll hear that term. The trade is expecting a certain yield, maybe a 183, 184, and USDA is still at 185 or 186 yield on the corn level. And where you really find that, or where you can really tease that out, is when you get those USDA reports that are somewhat bearish, like the last two WASDE reports, like the quarterly stocks report. And if the trade really believed those numbers, or really thought those numbers were going to come true, we probably would still be trading lower than where we are right now. But the trade clearly does not believe that the yield on corn is that high, and that we're going to have that much of or that level of an ending stock. So that's kind of kept this market supported in through all of that data. Now, how we're handling the government shutdown, we have a little bit of a benefit in that ag market, and our partners at John Stewart and Associates are very, very much disaggregated. So we're spread out all the way across. I'm in North Dakota. We've got offices in South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, you name
Mhm.
it. In the Corn Belt, we've got someone located there somewhere, and we have calls every morning. We're able to discuss what's going on in all those pockets, and kind of tease together what we think, as far as production looks like, what we're hearing from the elevators, what they're seeing for handle, what they're bringing in and dumping every day in their pits. So it allows us some real-time data. It's not necessarily accurate. It's a lot of times it's anecdotal, but you piece together enough of that anecdotal information, you kind of paint a picture for what's going on across the entire country.
Sure. And you guys do some surveys of your customers and that as well, clients, customers. So you've got that aggregated as well.
Yeah, and we're doing more of that with our partners, with John Stewart and Associates, getting that out there to the elevators they work with, the commercials they work with, the farmers that we work with, and kind of compiling all that data to try to paint that picture of what the marketplace looks like in real time.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate being able to get a little bit of knowledge from the trade and from agmarket.net when it comes to that, versus just looking out our own back door and trying to decide what to do. Along those lines, we'll close with a little bit on what about these farmers who are looking at holding on to storage, selling to carry a little bit. What things do they need to be looking at when they're making that decision?
Well, if you take soybeans, for example, there's a lot of talk of soybean producers that are going to be storing beans well into the marketing year, and that's twofold. One, they're hopeful that there is some type of trade deal with China, and that boosts prices on the futures board. But also, basis levels are just not real good. You take where I'm at in Western North Dakota. There's a lot of elevators out here that aren't even taking soybeans, or they've let their clientele know that as soon as their bin is full, whatever storage unit they're using for soybeans, as soon as it's full, they're shutting the pits and they're not dumping any more beans. So space is a real premium. Especially out here in the West without access to the P&W, without a lot of bushels going to China. And then places that you're looking at levels of $1.50 under basis levels. You can get into Iowa, you're looking at historically wide basis levels on beans. We've got some brokers down in Iowa that were once merchandisers telling us it's as wide as they've ever seen. The basis in some locations, that varies. I hate painting a wide stroke and assuming everyone falls into that, but seeing some incredibly wide basis levels. So a lot of producers have shifted. In the past, beans have always been a commodity that they like to push out the door quick. You get large amount of dollars for a truck as compared to corn or wheat, and they like storing the corn or the wheat till later. Some of that is changing this year. They feel like they can market the corn off the combine and store those beans and maybe capture some of that carry. The key, if you're going to do that, is you have to be willing to forward sell. And so the example I've been using when speaking with producers, and I spoke to a group of bankers last week, is the way we provide value in the marketplace is by changing a product's form, by changing its location, or changing its time. We're not changing the form of soybeans, and we're not, farmers aren't trucking it across country. That's up to the elevator. But what we can do if we have storage, we can change the time period that it's available for sale. And if you look for beans right now with the July board at 1077 versus the November board at 1020, the market's paying you 57 cents to store that soybean all the way out to July. If you do nothing, and nothing changes, and I think this is probably the key phrase when we talk about a carry market, it's saying, hey, if nothing changes fundamentally, if we're still in the same market environment in June, July of 2026 as we are right now, there's a very good chance that July soybean contract will be trading down to the 1020. So if you stuck the beans in the bin, you don't do anything, and this market stays where it's at, you might end up selling those beans in July at 1020, and you stored them all year for that end user for free. And so that's the idea of capturing carry, is we're going to go out there now. We're going to sell them to you either on the board. If you want to try to capture a better basis level, you would want to sell futures or sell an HTA with your local buyer, and then wait for a better opportunity to price basis if some type of a trade deal does occur between China and the United States. That would be the example of capturing carry. And then there's a host of additional things you can do. Once you lock that futures price in, you capture that 57, 60 cents of carry. There's a lot of other things you can do to participate in the market if we do get some type of a rally on a trade deal or South American weather, those types of things. So that's the idea. It's not, the market's trading 60 cents higher out in July. I'm going to sit and wait till then, and hopefully all my dreams come true and the market has rallied $2 and that carry still exists, which could occur. Don't get me wrong. Like I said at the very beginning, you got to remember when we talk about capturing carry, it's if the market stays as is, if nothing fundamentally changes. That's the idea, is those back months will roll down to where the nearby month is currently trading at.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is control what you can control, and don't store beans for free.
Exactly. If you're gonna stick them in the bin, there should be a plan. It shouldn't be to just hold and hope. You really shouldn't have to look any further. There was a lot of producers did that with corn in 2023, where they stuck it in the bin and ended up selling it in August of 2024, paid storage on it for an entire year, and ended up selling it $1 to $1.50 lower than they could have right out of the field. So those are mistakes we don't want to repeat. And like I said, there are ways to re-own that risk where you've got it sold, you've put a floor under it. And like I said, if something does happen with a trade deal, if weather turns south in South America and all of a sudden there's some premium being built in, you can capture some of that using call options, futures, whatever tool works best for each individual.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Tyler, for giving us some ideas about how farmers can find a few pennies in this market by controlling what they can control, not storing for free, and at the end of the day, maybe coming out ahead. Thank you so much. We appreciate having you back on Ag Marketing IQ in Depth, and thank you to agmarket.net for being a great partner to Farm Futures.
Thank you, Pam.